Commander Zefka stared at the glowing display screen in front of him with growing horror. The data streaming from their long-range sensors painted a picture of the most dangerous world he had ever encountered in his 40 years of galactic exploration. Planet designation Sol3, also known by its native inhabitants as Earth, was nothing short of a nightmare realm that defied all known parameters for habitable worlds. The atmospheric readings alone should have made life impossible. 21% oxygen created an environment so reactive that it could corrode metal and fuel devastating fires. The water covering most of the planet's surface was contaminated with salt concentrations that would burn through Viridian skin in minutes. Weather patterns showed storms capable of generating electrical discharges with enough power to vaporize their entire survey ship. ZEPH, second in command, Lieutenant Vexmol approached with another datapad filled with biological survey results. His usually steady hands trembled as he presented the findings. The planet teemed with creatures that seemed designed specifically for killing. Massive predators weighing several tons roamed the landmasses, their teeth capable of crushing bone, and their claws sharp enough to tear through reinforced armor. In the oceans swam leviathans that could swallow their ship whole, while smaller but equally deadly hunters patrolled every body of water. The survey team had documented creatures that injected paralyzing toxins, others that could generate lethal electrical charges, and some that appeared to be living weapons covered in natural armor plating. Flying predators with razor-sharp talons controlled the skies, while the very ground crawled with venomous arthropods and serpents. Even the plant life was hostile, with many species producing compounds toxic enough to kill most known sentient beings. Dr. Alex Warren floated in the observation module of the International Space Station, completely unaware that alien eyes were watching his world from the darkness beyond. He was conducting routine experiments on plant growth in zero gravity, documenting how Earth vegetables adapted to space conditions. Through the station's large windows, he could see the beautiful blue marble of his home planet, its swirling white clouds and vast oceans, creating a peaceful and serene view that never failed to fill him with wonder. The irony was lost on him that while he marveled at Earth's beauty, somewhere in the void an entire alien civilization was cataloging his world as the most terrifying place in the known galaxy. The same oceans that sparkled so magnificently in the sunlight were being recorded as vast pools of corrosive liquid harboring monstrous predators. The forests that looked like green carpets from orbit were being classified as hostile jungles, filled with countless deadly species on the planet's surface. Veterinarian Lisa Carter was having a perfectly ordinary day at her small animal clinic in suburban Colorado. She gently examined a fluffy orange tabby cat named Whiskers, who had been brought in by his elderly owner, Mrs. Johnson, for a routine checkup. Whiskers purred contentedly as Lisa checked his ears and listened to his heartbeat with her stethoscope. The cat's biggest concern seemed to be the temperature of the metal examination table, which made him shift his paws occasionally, seeking a warmer spot. Lisa smiled as she gave Whiskers a small treat and scratched behind his ears. The cat immediately began purring louder, a rumbling sound that filled the small examination room with its peaceful vibration. Mrs. Johnson chatted about how Whiskers had been spending his days, sleeping in sunny spots around the house and occasionally bringing her small toys as gifts. It was the kind of routine interaction that happened millions of times every day across Earth, so common and unremarkable that neither woman gave it a second thought. Meanwhile, 47 light-years away in the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime, an emergency session was being called to address the disturbing discovery in the Sol system. The vast circular chamber, capable of holding representatives from over 300 different species, buzzed with nervous energy as delegates received preliminary reports about the Deathworld that had been found in what was previously considered a quiet backwater region of the galaxy. Council Speaker Drimnow, an ancient being whose species had been exploring space for millennia, called for order with the traditional harmonic chimes. The assembled delegates fell silent as the initial survey data was projected onto the massive holographic display at the center of the chamber. Gasps and expressions of shock echoed throughout the hall as representatives saw the hostile environment. readings, and biological threat assessments, the most disturbing aspect of the discovery was not just that such a dangerous world existed, but that long-range spectral analysis confirmed the presence of artificial structures and electromagnetic signatures consistent with a technological civilization. Something had not only survived on this nightmare planet, but had actually thrived to the point of developing advanced technology and industry, research. Director Crickstell of the Andromedan Science Collective presented the detailed analysis to the stunned assembly. The electromagnetic emissions suggested a species that had mastered electricity and radio communication. Thermal imaging revealed vast urban complexes where millions of these creatures lived in close proximity. Most terrifying of all, preliminary observations indicated they had achieved spaceflight capability and had established outposts on nearby celestial bodies. The implications were staggering. Any species capable of surviving and flourishing on such a hostile world would possess combat capabilities beyond anything the galaxy had ever encountered. They would be immune to most known biological and chemical weapons. Their technology would be built to withstand conditions that would destroy conventional galactic equipment. Their very physiology would be adapted to an environment so harsh that it could serve as a weapon against most other life forms. ZEPH transmitted his final report to the Council with a recommendation that sent shock waves through the galactic community. He proposed immediate implementation of Protocol Omega-9, the highest possible threat classification reserved for extinction-level dangers to galactic civilization. His report concluded that the Sol system should be marked as absolutely forbidden territory, surrounded by warning beacons and monitored from the maximum possible safe distance. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, emergency broadcasts were sent to every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy warning them to avoid the Sol system at all costs. Military commanders began reviewing defensive strategies and contingency plans in case the Deathworld inhabitants ever decided to expand beyond their home system. Trade routes were hastily rerouted to give the dangerous region the widest possible berth. As the galaxy prepared for the possibility of encountering the most dangerous predators in known space, Lisa Carter finished her day at the clinic and drove home to her own small house. Her cat, Charlie, greeted her at the door with a gentle meow and rubbed against her legs affectionately. She picked him up and carried him to the kitchen, where she opened a can of cat food and filled his water bowl. Charlie purred happily as he ate his dinner, then settled down for an evening nap in his favorite chair by the window. Neither Lisa nor Charlie had any idea that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, an entire galactic civilization was trembling at the thought of creatures exactly like them. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council issued their dire warning about the Sol system, but curiosity proved stronger than fear for some members of the scientific community. The research vessel Whisper of Stars drifted silently at the edge of the Forbidden Zone. Its sophisticated sensors trained on the mysterious Deathworld and its terrifying inhabitants, Clicktor, adjusted the long-range observation equipment with trembling claws while his partner Vesnal monitored their ship's stealth systems. Both scientists belonged to the Zephyrian species, known throughout the galaxy for their cautious nature and methodical approach to dangerous research. They had volunteered for this mission despite knowing it could be their last, driven by an overwhelming need to understand what kind of creatures could survive in such a hostile environment. Their orders were simple but terrifying. Observe the Deathworld beings from maximum safe distance, document their capabilities, and retreat immediately if detected. Under no circumstances were they to make contact or reveal their presence. The last thing the galaxy needed was to provoke the wrath of whatever nightmarish predators ruled that cursed planet. Captain Jake Morrison guided his civilian transport ship New Horizon through the routine flight path between Earth and Mars colony. His cargo hold was filled with supplies for the mining operation, including food, medical equipment, and personal items requested by the colonists. It was his 15th run to Mars this year, and the journey had become as familiar to him as driving to the grocery store. He never expected that this particular trip would change the course of galactic history. Morrison's navigation sensors detected an unusual reading at the edge of his display screen. The signature was unlike anything in the standard database of known vessels or space debris. His first thought was that it might be experimental technology from one of Earth's research programs, but the energy patterns were completely foreign. After running several diagnostic checks and confirming that his equipment was functioning properly, he reached the impossible conclusion that he was looking at a spacecraft of unknown origin. The discovery protocols were clear. Any evidence of non-human technology was to be reported immediately to Earth's Space Defense Command. Morrison transmitted his findings and received orders to maintain safe distance while waiting for military backup. However, his curiosity got the better of him when the unknown vessel began moving away from Earth's orbital zone. Against direct orders, he decided to follow at a respectful distance, hoping to gather more information about humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. Aboard the Whisper of Stars, panic erupted when their sensors detected the approaching human vessel. Clicktor's worst fears were being realized as one of the Deathworld predators closed in on their position. The ship's automated systems immediately began calculating escape vectors while Vesnall frantically tried to determine if they had been deliberately targeted or simply discovered by accident. The alien vessel was clearly superior to human technology, capable of faster-than-light travel and equipped with advanced stealth systems. However, the crew was so terrified of their human observer that they forgot about their technological advantages. Instead of simply jumping to hyperspace and disappearing, they found themselves frozen with fear, unable to decide whether fleeing would provoke an attack or if staying would be interpreted as hostile intent. Morrison established a basic communication channel using standard mathematical sequences and universal physical constants. His background in engineering helped him create a simple binary code system that should be understandable to any intelligent species with knowledge of physics and mathematics. After several hours of patient transmission, he received a response that confirmed his wildest dreams and biggest fears. Humanity was not alone in the universe. Dr. Ben Parker received the emergency call at 3 in the morning while he was grading papers in his office at the University of California. As Earth's leading expert in theoretical xenolinguistics and interspecies communication protocols, he had spent his career preparing for a moment that most people believed would never come. Within 6 hours, he was aboard a military transport, heading for Morrison's coordinates, carrying hastily assembled first contact equipment and a head full of theories about alien psychology. The first video transmission between species took place in Morrison's cramped ship cabin. Parker had set up sophisticated translation software and prepared careful presentations about human culture, mathematics, and peaceful intentions. He expected the aliens to be curious about human technology or social structures. Instead, the two Zephyrian scientists appeared on screen wearing full environmental suits and maintaining maximum distance from their camera. As if they expected Parker to reach through the transmission and attack them physically, Parker tried to ease their obvious fear by speaking in calm, measured tones and demonstrating non-threatening human behaviors. He showed them art, music, and literature, hoping to convey humanity's peaceful nature and cultural sophistication. However, every gesture seemed to increase rather than decrease their terror. Though Parker could not understand why his attempts at friendly communication were having the opposite effect, the breakthrough moment came when Parker's orange tabby cat, Ginger, decided to investigate the unusual activity in the cabin. The cat had been sleeping peacefully in Parker's quarters during the journey, but the sound of voices and electronic equipment drew her curiosity. She jumped onto the desk where Parker was conducting the transmission and sat directly in front of the camera, blinking slowly at the alien observers while beginning to groom her front paw with typical feline indifference to the historic nature of the moment. The reaction from the alien scientists was immediate and dramatic. Through the translation software, Parker could hear panicked exclamations and what sounded like urgent consultations with off-screen colleagues. Clicktor's voice became high-pitched and rapid as he transmitted frantic reports back to his command structure, using words that the translation program rendered as apex predator, biological weapon, and domesticated killing machine. Parker stared in confusion as the aliens began what appeared to be a detailed analysis of Ginger's physical characteristics. They focused their cameras on her retractable claws, measured her proportions, and recorded her movements with the intensity of military intelligence analysts studying enemy weapon systems. When Ginger began purring, a low rumbling sound that filled the cabin, the aliens interpreted it as some form of threat display or psychological warfare technique. The situation became even more surreal when Ginger brought Parker a small toy mouse that she had been carrying around the ship. The aliens watched in horror as she dropped the miniature prey at Parker's feet and looked up at him expectantly. Through their translation system, Parker could hear them discussing what they believed was a ritualistic demonstration of the creatures' hunting capabilities and killer instinct. Parker tried to explain that Ginger was simply a pet, a companion animal that humans kept for emotional support and friendship. However, his words only seemed to increase their terror. The concept that humans had somehow formed alliances with such obviously dangerous predators was beyond their comprehension. To species that viewed all relationships through the lens of survival and dominance, the idea of keeping a small carnivore as a beloved family member was incomprehensible and terrifying. The transmission ended abruptly when Ginger decided to rub against the camera equipment, causing the video feed to shake and distort. The last image the aliens saw was the cat's face filling their screen, her bright green eyes staring directly at them while her purring grew louder. CatHFY immediately severed all communications and began transmitting emergency reports to the Galactic Council, convinced that humanity's war beasts were even more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of receiving CatHFY's panic transmission from the edge of the Sol system. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, their faces showing expressions of fear and disbelief as they reviewed the footage of humanity's terrifying companion creatures. The grainy video of Ginger the cat became the most analyzed piece of intelligence data in galactic history. Military experts from 12 different species studied every frame of the transmission, focusing on what they believed were sophisticated biological weapons that the humans had somehow managed to tame and control. General Hexvad of the Andromedan Defense Force pointed out the creature's retractable claws, which appeared capable of extending and retracting at will like built-in daggers. The flexible spine and powerful leg muscles suggested jumping abilities that could launch devastating surprise attacks from unexpected angles. Dr. Thrixmol, the galaxy's leading expert on predator biology, presented a detailed analysis that sent shock waves through the assembled delegates. The creature's large eyes were clearly adapted for night vision, making it a perfect hunter in low-light conditions. Its triangular ears could rotate independently to track multiple sound sources simultaneously. Most disturbing of all was the creature's apparent ability to produce that low-frequency rumbling sound, which military analysts concluded must be some form of psychological warfare designed to paralyze prey through fear on Earth. Admiral Kate Thompson found herself thrust into the newly created position of head of alien relations division without any training or precedent to guide her. Her military background had prepared her for conventional warfare, not for explaining to terrified aliens that house cats were harmless pets. The communications from various alien governments were becoming increasingly frantic, with some offering tribute and others threatening to unite against what they perceived as humanity's inevitable conquest of the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire sent a formal diplomatic message offering to surrender 3 of their outer colonies in exchange for humanity, agreeing not to launch an invasion with their biological weapons. The silicon-based architects of Kepler 442b began frantically constructing orbital defense platforms around their homeworld. Even the peaceful traders of the Centauri Federation rerouted all their commercial flights to avoid any system within 50 light-years of Sol. Meanwhile, completely unaware of the galactic panic she was causing, veterinary student Amy Rodriguez continued her volunteer work at the Pine Valley Animal Shelter. Her daily routine involved feeding dozens of cats, cleaning their living spaces, and spending time socializing with the animals to help them become more adoptable. She loved working with the cats because of their independent personalities and the way each one had unique quirks and preferences. The shelter's security cameras, which were connected to the internet for remote monitoring by staff members, inadvertently broadcast Amy's activities to the world. During a routine test of Earth's new communication system with the aliens, some of this footage was accidentally transmitted into space. The aliens received crystal-clear video of Amy surrounded by cats of various sizes and colors, all moving freely around what appeared to be some kind of specialized facility. The alien analysts concluded that humans maintained massive breeding and training centers for their biological weapons. They watched in horror as Amy handled the creatures with casual ease, picking them up, carrying them around, and even allowing them to climb on her shoulders. The fact that she showed no fear of these dangerous predators suggested that humans possessed incredible courage and combat skills. Or perhaps they had developed some form of mental control over the creatures. Dr. Rachel Green, an animal behaviorist from the University of Michigan, was brought in to help explain cat behavior to the alien observers during the next scheduled communication session. She had spent years studying feline psychology and was excited about the opportunity to share her knowledge with an entirely new audience. However, she had no idea that her peaceful academic presentation would be interpreted as a military briefing. On biological warfare, Rachel set up her presentation in a comfortable living room environment, hoping to show the aliens how cats interacted with humans in natural home settings. Her white Persian cat, Snowball, was the perfect subject for the demonstration because of her calm temperament and photogenic appearance. Rachel began by explaining basic cat behavior, describing how cats used purring to communicate contentment, and how they showed affection through physical contact. When Snowball began purring loudly during the transmission, the alien observers immediately went into high alert. The sound registered on their audio equipment as a low-frequency vibration that their scientists believed could be used to disorient enemies or possibly even cause physical damage to certain species. The fact that the humans seemed completely unaffected by this acoustic attack only reinforced their belief that humans were incredibly dangerous predators themselves. The situation became even more alarming when Snowball decided to bring Rachel a small dead mouse that she had caught earlier that day. This was normal behavior for indoor cats who occasionally caught small prey, and Rachel simply thanked Snowball before disposing of the mouse in the garbage. However, the aliens interpreted this exchange as a ritualistic display of the creature's killing abilities. With the human accepting the offering as proof of successful hunt training, Rachel continued her presentation by discussing how cats maintained their natural hunting instincts even in domestic environments, explaining that this was why they enjoyed playing with toys that resembled prey animals. She demonstrated by dangling a feather toy in front of Snowball, who immediately began stalking and pouncing on it with lightning-fast reflexes. The aliens recorded every movement, analyzing Snowball's attack patterns and calculating the precise speed and accuracy of her strikes. The most terrifying moment came when Rachel picked up Snowball and held her close to the camera to show the aliens her facial features and expression. Snowball's large green eyes stared directly into the lens, while she purred contentedly in Rachel's arms. The aliens saw this as the human forcing the predator to demonstrate its hypnotic abilities, possibly showing them how humans use these creatures to mentally control their enemies before attacking. After the transmission ended, the Galactic Council immediately moved to implement the most extensive military buildup in their recorded history. Defense budgets were tripled overnight as civilizations across the galaxy began preparing for what they believed would be an inevitable invasion by humans and their army of biological weapons. Military academies began developing new training programs specifically designed to counter small, fast-moving predators with psychological warfare capabilities. The irony was that while the galaxy prepared for war against humanity's terrifying war beasts, millions of cats across Earth were doing exactly what Snowball had been doing during the transmission, sleeping in sunny windows, playing with toys and purring contentedly in their human companions' arms, completely unaware that they had become the most feared creatures in the known universe. Despite the growing fear throughout the galaxy, A small group of alien scientists decided that direct observation was the only way to truly understand the threat posed by humanity and their terrifying companion creatures. Led by the brave researcher Nimkar of the Velathan Science Institute, they submitted a formal request to establish a research station on Luna, Earth's natural satellite, where they could study the humans and their biological weapons from what they hoped would be a safe distance. Dr. Marcus Johnson, Earth's chief xenobiologist and now the planet's leading expert on alien relations, welcomed the opportunity for genuine scientific exchange despite the obvious fear and misunderstandings that had characterized all previous communications. He believed that direct contact and patient explanation could help bridge the gap between species and prevent the military conflict that seemed to be building across the galaxy. The Luna research station became operational 3 months after the initial alien contact, staffed by both human scientists and a small team of heavily protected alien observers. The aliens insisted on wearing full environmental suits at all times and maintained separate living quarters with independent life support systems. They had convinced themselves that even the air on human-controlled stations might be contaminated with biological agents designed to weaken potential enemies. The cultural exchange program began with basic scientific demonstrations and language lessons. But the aliens remained focused on studying what they believed were humanity's most dangerous weapons. Every human who visited the station was carefully scanned for the presence of the small predator companions, and the aliens had prepared detailed emergency procedures in case one of the creatures was brought aboard. Dr. Marcus Johnson decided to invite his research assistant, Nurse Kelly White, to help demonstrate normal human daily activities for the alien observers. Kelly was a cheerful young woman who worked at the university's veterinary clinic and had extensive experience with animals. She was excited about the opportunity to meet aliens, though she found their constant fear and defensive behavior somewhat puzzling and sad. When Kelly arrived at the station, she brought along her small kitten named Mittens, thinking that the aliens might enjoy meeting a younger example of Earth's domestic cats. Mittens was only 4 months old with soft gray fur and bright blue eyes that gave him an innocent and playful appearance. Kelly had raised him from birth and considered him to be like a child, carrying him everywhere and doting on his every need. The alien observers went into immediate panic mode when their sensors detected the presence of what their databases now classified as a class of biological weapon. Nimkar ordered all personnel to retreat to secure positions while she observed the creature through reinforced barriers and high-resolution cameras. The fact that this particular specimen was smaller than the others only convinced her that it must be even more dangerous, possibly a specialized infiltration unit designed for covert operations. Kelly set Mittens down in the station's common area and began playing with him using a simple ball of yarn she had brought from Earth. The kitten pounced on the yarn with typical feline enthusiasm, batting at it with his tiny paws and chasing it around the room with quick, unpredictable movements. Kelly laughed with delight at his antics, encouraging him with gentle words and occasionally picking him up for affectionate cuddles. The aliens recorded every second of this interaction, analyzing what they interpreted as advanced combat training, designed to enhance the creature's natural hunting abilities. They noted the precise coordination between the human trainer and the biological weapon, documenting how the human used specific vocal commands and physical rewards to reinforce the creature's aggressive responses to moving targets. Dr. Peter Adams, a zoologist specializing in animal evolution, arrived at the station the following week with a comprehensive presentation about the history of cat domestication. He had prepared detailed charts showing how wild cats had gradually adapted to living alongside humans over thousands of years, developing traits that made them better companions while retaining their natural hunting instincts for pest control. The aliens listened to his presentation with growing horror as Adams explained how cats had once been worshipped as gods in ancient Egypt, complete with temples dedicated to feline deities and elaborate burial ceremonies for beloved cats. The aliens interpreted this historical evidence as proof that cats had once ruled human civilization, possibly through some form of mind control. Before agreeing to a strategic alliance that benefited both species, Adam showed them footage of wild cats hunting mice and birds, explaining how these natural behaviors had made cats valuable to early human settlements for controlling rodent populations that threatened food stores. The aliens saw this as documentation of the creatures' incredible killing efficiency and their willingness to hunt on behalf of their human allies, strengthening their belief that cats were essentially living weapons that had been bred and trained for warfare. The breakthrough moment came when communications specialist Linda Foster brought her elderly cat, Patches, to meet the alien researchers in person. Patches was 15 years old and suffered from arthritis that made him move slowly and sleep most of the day. He was a gentle, patient cat who had lived his entire life as a beloved family pet, content to spend his days sleeping in sunny spots and receiving occasional treats and affection from his human family. Despite the aliens' fears, Patches showed immediate curiosity about the strange new visitors to the station. His natural feline inquisitiveness overcame any caution as he approached the alien observation area and began investigating their equipment with the slow, deliberate movements of an elderly cat. He sniffed at their environmental suits and rubbed against their protective barriers, purring loudly in the way that old cats do when they encounter something interesting. For the first time since the initial contact, Nimcar found herself questioning the assumptions that had driven galactic policy regarding Earth and its inhabitants. The creature standing before her showed no signs of aggression or hostility. Instead, it seemed genuinely interested in making peaceful contact, displaying behaviors that appeared more social than predatory. As Patches continued to purr and rub against the barriers separating him from the aliens, Nimcar began to develop a revolutionary theory that she was initially afraid to voice. The creature's behavior reminded her of small companion animals from her own homeworld, creatures that were kept for emotional comfort rather than practical purposes. Could it be possible that these terrifying predators were actually something far more innocent? The other alien researchers noticed Nimcar's changing attitude and began to question their own assumptions about the nature of humanity's relationship with these creatures. They watched as Linda Foster gently picked up Patches and carried him to a comfortable chair where he immediately settled down for a nap. Completely relaxed and trusting in the presence of both humans and aliens, this simple interaction between an elderly cat and his human companion began to crack the foundation of fear and misunderstanding that had brought the galaxy to the brink of war, though none of the observers yet realized the full implications of what they were witnessing. Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood before the largest gathering in Galactic Council history, preparing to deliver what would become the most important scientific presentation ever given. Representatives from over 400 worlds had assembled virtually to hear her comprehensive explanation of Earth's biosphere, hoping to finally understand the true nature of the Deathworld and its terrifying inhabitants. Sarah had no idea that her routine planetary ecology lecture was about to change the course of galactic civilization. The presentation began with standard scientific data about Earth's climate, geology, and basic life support systems. Sarah explained how Earth's 21% oxygen atmosphere, while higher than many worlds, was actually within normal parameters for carbon-based life. She showed comparative data proving that Earth's gravity, temperature ranges, and radiation levels were remarkably similar to dozens of other inhabited planets throughout the galaxy. The alien delegates listened with growing confusion as Sarah described Earth's biodiversity in terms that made it sound like a normal, thriving ecosystem rather than the nightmarish death world they had been led to believe. She explained how predator and prey relationships created natural balance, how most species were actually quite small and harmless, and how the largest predators typically avoided contact with humans rather than seeking them out for combat. When Sarah reached the section of her presentation dealing with domestic animals, she prepared to address what she knew was the aliens' primary concern about Earth's supposed biological weapons. She had brought along visual aids and video footage showing the evolutionary relationship between wildcats and their domestic descendants, hoping to finally clear up the misunderstandings that had brought the galaxy to the brink of war. However, Before Sarah could begin explaining cat domestication, her presentation was interrupted by her own cat, Charlie, who had somehow managed to follow her into the secured presentation room. Charlie was a typical house cat with orange and white markings who belonged to Sarah's family, and had probably wandered into the building while looking for attention or food. Charlie jumped onto the presentation table and knocked over Sarah's coffee mug while trying to rub against her laptop computer. The hot coffee spilled across her notes and dripped onto the floor, creating a small mess that would have been completely unremarkable under normal circumstances. However, this simple accident was being broadcast live to hundreds of alien civilizations who had been expecting to witness a formal military briefing about humanity's most dangerous weapons. Sarah laughed at Charlie's typical cat behavior and gently moved him away from her equipment while cleaning up the spilled coffee with paper towels. She gave him affectionate scratches behind his ears and spoke to him in the gentle, loving tone that humans naturally use when talking to their pets. Charlie immediately began purring loudly and rubbed against Sarah's hand, completely ignoring the fact that his every movement was being analyzed by military experts across the galaxy. The alien observers watched this interaction with growing amazement rather than fear. For the first time, they were seeing a human and cat interact in a completely natural, unguarded moment. There was no evidence of military training, combat preparation, or weapon deployment. Instead, they witnessed what appeared to be genuine affection between two different species who clearly enjoyed each other's company. Sarah decided to incorporate Charlie's unexpected appearance into her presentation, using him as a living example of human-animal relationships. She explained how cats had originally been attracted to human settlements because of the abundant food sources, particularly the mice and rats that gathered around stored grain. Over thousands of years, the cats that were friendliest toward humans received better food and shelter, gradually evolving into the domestic companions that existed today. Engineer Tom Harrison, working on the Luna Research Station, provided additional evidence that helped solidify the aliens' changing understanding of human-cat relationships. He had been asked to provide live footage of typical human domestic life, so he set up cameras in his own home and broadcast a normal evening with his three cats, Whiskers, Shadow, and Luna. The aliens watched in fascination as Tom returned home from work and was greeted by three cats who clearly saw him as a source of food, comfort, and entertainment rather than a military commander. The cats followed him around his house, meowing for attention and competing for the best spots on his lap while he watched television. Tom fed them commercial cat food from cans, provided them with fresh water, and even cleaned their litter box without showing any signs of fear or military caution. The most convincing evidence came when the aliens observed Tom taking one of his cats, Luna, to a veterinary clinic for routine medical care. They watched as the veterinarian examined Luna with gentle hands, checking her health and giving her preventive medications to keep her comfortable and disease-free. The idea that humans would spend time and resources caring for the medical needs of their supposed biological weapons made no sense from a military perspective. The Galactic Council's emergency session to discuss these new observations lasted for 3 days as delegates struggled to reconcile their previous assumptions with the overwhelming evidence that cats were simply beloved companion animals. Military leaders who had spent months preparing defensive strategies against feline biological weapons found themselves trying to explain to their governments why they had been afraid of creatures that spent most of their time sleeping and playing with toys. Commander Zefka, the original observer who had classified Earth as a death world, submitted his resignation in shame when he realized how badly he had misinterpreted the evidence. His replacement, a younger officer named Kilvex, saw an opportunity to turn the embarrassing situation into something positive for galactic civilization. If humans could form such successful partnerships with small predators, perhaps other species could learn from their example. The transformation in galactic attitudes toward Earth happened remarkably quickly once the truth about cats became widely known. Species that had been preparing for war suddenly found themselves curious about the possibility of keeping companion animals of their own. Diplomatic requests poured in from dozens of worlds asking for information about animal care, veterinary medicine, and the emotional benefits of human-animal relationships. 6 months after the cat revelation, the first Galactic Pet Adoption Center opened on the neutral world of Haven Station, jointly operated by human veterinarians and alien scientists who wanted to learn about animal companionship. Dr. Lisa Carter, the same veterinarian who had treated Whiskers at the beginning of this story, found herself teaching alien species how to care for Earth. Cats and other companion animals, the center became wildly popular as aliens discovered the joy and comfort that came from caring for small, affectionate creatures. Species that had never experienced unconditional love from another being found themselves completely devoted to their new feline companions. The cats, for their part, adapted to alien environments with typical feline flexibility, as long as their basic needs for food, warmth, and attention were met. Ambassador Ben Parker sat in his office on the new diplomatic station, reviewing peaceful trade agreements with 17 different alien civilizations that had been established in the wake of the cat revelation. His own cat, Ginger, stretched lazily on his desk in a patch of artificial sunlight, completely unaware that she had inadvertently prevented an intergalactic war and ushered in a new age of cooperation between species. The final report from the Galactic Council officially reclassified Earth from Deathworld Omega 9 to Paradise World Alpha 1, with the special designation of recommended for therapeutic cat interaction programs. What had begun as humanity's most terrifying secret had become their greatest gift to the galaxy, proving that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is simply the desire to care for another living being,